All right. Uh, Welcome to class 10. In our last class, we're able to put everything that we've talked about on HTML and CSS together by building this small UI, which is responsive, and which means on mobile, the design is looking nice, and when you go to desktop too, is looking the way it's supposed to look like. So no matter the devices that the user is using to check it, it's going to display properly to them. But that's not all. Before you can start doing a lot of things, you need JavaScript, which is a third language that you need as a front end developer there. So in order for you to start building a site that is interactive, you need JavaScript. For example, here now, look at this simple page. You can think of this as a site for a particular restaurant, like IT 7 or any restaurant. And when you want to buy something there, they punch it on their display. But instead of them using a dedicated machine, you can build application for them that it works on the browser, which is what we call the web app. So anything web app means that your application is running on the browser. Mobile app, it's running on your native phone. But these days, you're always going to see a lot of app on the browser there. And this is one of the application here. But in order for you to build an application that is interactive, you need JavaScript. So the HTML, the CSS are here, which is what is making this thing to be placed the way they are supposed to be placed. And again, too, it is responsive. So if I open the dev tools and if I change it here now to a small screen, you see that the arrangement is quite different. So we've talked about how you can do something like this, but there is something missing. So look at it here now. Once I click on this, you see that what is here before is not what is here again. And again too, some item pop out from here. And if I click on this one, you see that it goes back. This is JavaScript in action here. So you have the HTML to structure your page, you have the CSS to style it, arrange it anyhow you want, then you now have the JavaScript to add interaction. So without this JavaScript, that our button that we worked on, if you click it for now till tomorrow, nothing will happen because the button doesn't know what to do. But here now, if you look at the button, once you click on it, it changes how things are arranged on the page. And again, too, I can increase it. If you're clicking the plus, the number will increase. If you click the minus, it will decrease the number. And again, too, is updating all the necessary values. So which means the price for this is 7.2. So since you are buying 3, that means you are going to pay 21,600 like that. Again too, you can add multiple items. So since this one is 610 like that, as you can see, it has been added and everything is getting displayed here. So this is the quantity, this is the price. Then by the time you multiply them together, you get a final value. Then the addition of all this one too is what is now showing down here. And again, I can click on this confirm order. You see that something else it's coming on the screen, and once I click on start, it restarts everything from scratch. So in order for you to be able to add this kind of interaction to your page, you need JavaScript. And as you can see here, I've already put this thing down. So JavaScript is home of what? Headache and fun like that, because this one is not like the HTML or CSS that they are forgiving. This one is not forgiving at all. So this is your first programming language when you are dealing with web development. So this is a proper programming language. For the HTML and CSS, HTML is a markup language, which means it describes the structure of your page, while the CSS is for styling. But this is a proper programming language. So which means there are rules that you need to follow. And if you don't follow the rules, then you get error. You will not even see anything on the page. And that's the reason why I've already prepared HTML page with the notes. I'm going to be sharing this in on the group, so you can always go there. And again too, it's chapter by chapter, and we're going to be starting with the foundation because everything is always based on foundation. Whatever you're going to be doing, it's using something behind the scene. When you want to do mathematics too, you start with basic stuff like you add number together, you multiply from there, you continue. The same thing here too. So we have 20 chapters, but for us to look at for web development, because JavaScript is not just for web development alone. It's not just for front end alone. It can be used on the back end. But the knowledge you have here on JavaScript, that's what you take to the back end or to for the mobile app, and you can now develop on it there like that. So we have table of content. You can always click on any one of them to go to it anytime you need it. So once I share it on the group, it's just a single HTML file. You don't need to do a lot of things. Load it in your browser and you can click on any one of them you always want to go back to and check. But this is just a normal note. I'm going to explain a lot, and again too, we're going to be putting some stuff in the code there like that, or some stuff that are going to happen on the browser later on there like that. And for the first one, which is the chapter 1, which is part of the basic stuff that, or the foundation that you need to know. I've started with this in already. What is JavaScript? This is the language that you use to add interaction to the page like that, which is what I've shown you. For example, you can read all these stories, whatever stuff. That's not what we are here for like that. But what you are going to be using it for later on is that you are going to be using it, as you can see, dynamically update HTML and CSS. And that's what they say, what is going on here. If you look at it, before I click the button, there is no line around this box. But once I click on it, you see that there is a line here. And again, to the content that is there is no longer the same thing again. So this is what we call the dynamically update HTML and CSS here like that. Again, to respond to user events, like click, you're going to see how to do that. As you can see, is when you click on this button that something happens. So it's responding to whatever you are doing on the page. So how do you do that? If I click on this plus, you can see this one is responding by increasing the value, and this one is responding by decreasing the value like that. So JavaScript is what you can use. Again, you can fetch data from online. You're going to see how to do this one too. It's part of this our chapter. So, and this one is under here. So this fetch API, you are going to learn how to do this. And this one means that we talked about the backend when we started with this thing. So how do you communicate with backend to get data? That's where the fetch from the server will come in. But this side right now is not communicating with the backend. All the data that is using, they're already on the front end. But that's not how it's always going to be, because the data is going to be different from different user. So you need to know the user first before you display the content. So which means all those data, they are safe somewhere. Then the one you need, retrieve it and you display it to the corresponding user there like that. So again, you can read about all this one right now. You don't need it. What we need right now is how we can add JavaScript to our page. So, when you want to use your CSS, you have to add it to your page by using your inline CSS. You can use the embedded or the internal CSS, or you can use external CSS. The same thing here too. We have the 3 method. And I always told you the recommended method is always to use external, because that you can connect it to different HTML file that need the same functionality. So how do you include inline? I'm going to show you everything, but we're not going to be using inline there like that. So to include it, you're always going to be seeing something like this. So we have all the events that you want to attach. What is events? I will be talking more about it when we get to chapter. What did I even put it there? So it should be around that. Yeah, so you are going to be seeing it here in chapter 8 like that. So you are going to be seeing event as chapter 9. So you are going to see event. So on, so this on click, so here means that anytime this thing is click, you want to do something. But whatever you are going to be having here is all about JavaScript. And one of the JavaScript stuff you can use here is this alert, which is one that brings a box out. So you just clicked me like that. So save, go back to the page. Where did I hide it? As you can see, I added on the section of it. So which means I can click anywhere in the image. If I click anywhere here, it will not happen. Nothing will happen, because where this thing is attached to is a section of the image. And what that means is that once this thing is clear, as you can see now, it's pop up. So this is what we call alert here. This box here is what we call alert. It's part of the browser. Once you call it, you pass the message you want to display, and that's the message, as you can see, is showing here. And once you want to close it, then you click OK. But we don't do it in this way, because what if I want this thing to happen on different elements? Am I going to be doing copy and paste? No. We have a better way, just like our CSS there like that. So we don't do it like this. So you won't be seeing me using this method, except when we get to framework later on, because when we get to framework, it will look something like this. But technically, You don't do it with your normal HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Apart from that, we have the internal or the embedded the script there. So when you want to include JavaScript, so you can do it like this. When you are doing the embedded for the CSS, we use the style. Then inside this style, you put all your CSS like that. So when you're talking about the JavaScript, this one is now script. So whatever you put it inside this script is all about JavaScript there, like that. So whatever you have here, let me explain. Whatever you have here, that's all about JavaScript. But we don't place the JavaScript directly in the edge. We normally place it before the closing of the body here. So we don't place it at the top. Why? The reason is that when the browser gets here, whatever you put there, it will interpret everything first before it continue interpreting your code on the page. The way this thing works is that it's checking your code line by line and it's interpreting them. So if you put anything here in the JavaScript and there's some code that can take time before it will load, because you need to, sometimes maybe you are connected to online or you are doing something that it needs to wait for on this line there like that, it will not continue. It will stop on this line. It will not continue at all. But that's not what you want. And again, too, when we get to DOM later on, your JavaScript code you have there cannot have access to what is here. You've not given birth to someone and you are doing naming ceremony. It's not making sense. So here, you want this script here to have access to what is here. But the browser has not gotten to this side. So if you try to select anything from here, it will complain that it can't find that content. There is one way of solving the problem. One way of solving the problem is by using the file. The file means you know that this thing, you want to use it, but wait for the entire page to load first before you now run it. But in order to be on the safer side, because this is the file, it's for new browser. But if you want your stuff to always work for every browser, that's the reason why we have this method of placing it before the closing. At this point now, everything at the top, the browser has already seen, so has already read everything. So from here now, you can always go up and locate whatever you want to do with the content there. So you always see the script being placed before the closing body. Before this closing body, you can place your script. And whatever you do there is all about JavaScript code like that. For example, we have something known as console, because we are going to be using this in a lot. As you can see here, my AI has already brought it up. So this console is related to this browser console. So this console, it's what you can use to send message to the browser console. And we're going to be using this place a lot for our JavaScript code for now until we get to this chapter 8. For now, since we are not in this chapter 8, because before you can start using JavaScript to manipulate the content of the page, you must have already gone through chapter 1 all the way to this 10 before you start doing all the way to 8. Because from here, this is where you start doing some simple stuff there like that. But this console is what we're going to be using to send the result, because JavaScript is not changing the content on the page directly until you tell him to change a particular content. But how do you do that? You need chapter 8 before you can do that. But there's some stuff you need to know first before you get to chapter 8. So how do you now see the result of all those ones? So we're going to be using the console here. So in order for you to send message to the console, you call the console followed by dot. What is it dot doing? You are going to know about that once you get to object. And that's the reason why you need to understand all this one first before you start changing the content on the page. But once you get to that chapter 5 there like that, 7, you are going to see what this dot is like that. But I won't explain that one right now. What you just need to know is that console, then followed by dot, then followed by this log. What is this bracket doing there too? Once we get to function, you understand what is going. And that's why you see that everything I arrange according to the way you have to know them. Because when you're dealing with function, function will be using things from all these your variables and types. So that's why the thing is arranged in a way that you have to follow them. It's just like your HTML and CSS or some stuff that you need to know. And inside this log or inside this bracket, that's where you put the message that you want to display in the console there. So once this one is saved now, and I go back to the browser, as you can see, you see that the message is coming out here. So from our code, we are sending message to the console. And the advantage here is that it will tell you the file that is sending message to it, and the line where the message, just like your CSS. So that, because this thing is very important when you have a lot of code and you're sending something to the console, you know where that message is coming from, and you can always go back and check whatever you want to do there later on there. The same thing here too, JavaScript code too, is interpreting language. So which means everything you type is line by line there like that. So this is hello world 1, hello world 2, and hello world 3. But later on when we get to the advanced parts like this promise here, it will not be something like that. I hope it's this way you arrange it, that same way it's going to come back. No, it's not always going to be like that. But for now, everything is going to be the way you type them. So save, go back to the page. As you can see, each one of them. So this one is coming from line 50, this one is coming from line 51, and this one is coming from line 52. And if you check it, you see that is the same thing like that. So this is how to do your internal script or the embedded one. But you know, we will not be using this method. The method we are going to be using is the external JavaScript. So how do you deal with the external? It's still like this, just that we're going to be doing something else. So it's still the script we are going to be using, but instead of just typing script, we are going to be passing the source. No, you are going to be passing the source, just like your image. Where is the image coming from? So again, too, this one we're connecting to external JavaScript. You know, JavaScript can be in the same folder. You know, the linking method we've talked about is what you're always going to use. Since they're in the same folder, I just need to mention the name and the extension of the file. So here now, what you are saying is that this is your JavaScript is not inside this HTML file. It's coming from this so place. And when the stuff loads, the browser will go there, download, and it will execute whatever you have inside. But right now, nothing is inside. So that's why it's going. So now if I go to the file, the same thing here too. Whatever you be doing inside that your script, that's what you do here. So we just need to do console log like that. So here I will just have hello like this word from index.js file, which I'm going to do external like that. So save, go back to the page, and if it is connected, you see that it will see, and as you can see, it's coming from index.js on line 1. And the reason it's working is because we connected them together like this. So if I disable this, go back to the page, you see that nothing will happen because now they don't know about each other again like that. So we have the embedded or the internal, and we have the external JavaScript. So this is the one I'm just going to be used, and everything we're going to be doing is going to be coming from this file. And before we continue there like that, because I don't think I actually put it here. Yeah, the console I've explained that one. But before I jump into these variables and types, I need to talk about something known as comments. You know, if you look at my HTML, you see that, or from CSS, you see that some of the stuff here, they are not showing at all, which was something I've explained here, that this is a comment in CSS. The same thing can be done in HTML. I know when you want to do comment in HTML, this is how you open the comment, and this is how you close the comment. So anything in between this stuff here, they are referred to as a comment. So which means they are there in the code, but the parser is going to ignore it. Anything that is comment, it will see it, but it will ignore the stuff. So which means if you go to the page and you check your source code, you are going to see everything there. Just that the browser will ignore it. It's not that it will remove it. They will still be there, but it will not interpret anything that is comment. So be there for you as developer to see, but not for the parser. You know, that is engine that is translating everything that you type into what is going to show on the screen. So for the HTML, anything that you put inside this and this, the browser is going to ignore them. It's not going to render it on the page inside HTML. If it is the CSS, it is like this. Yes. Yes. Now it's just I'm just using shortcut there, which is the control this thing. So on Windows it is control then forward slash, but on Mac it is command forward slash. So it's on and off stuff. So when it is there, it will remove. When it's not there, so since I now want, you know, it's wrapping my cursor, but I want it to wrap a particular stuff. So that's why I'm selecting those one first before wrapping the stuff. The same thing in CSS. It's still the same thing in CSS. So if I don't want this one now, please look at it first. So if I don't want this one now, what I will just do is to write. You can see what I'm saying is that this is your starting point and this is the end. So where you are light, once you just pride it, so it knows what to do automatically. But if your cursor is just on one line, it will only do it for that line alone. So if I want it to happen to multiple lines, I will highlight those lines will be highlighted first before you do the stuff. Because I don't like to delete. I always want to leave it there so that we can always make reference to it later on. And that's the same thing here too. I don't want to delete this one. As you can see, this one now is commented out like that. And how do you create comments in JavaScript? So we have different methods that you can use, or we have different types of comments in JavaScript. It's not like the HTML and CSS that you have only one way. Here you have three ways of creating comment, or two major ways like that. So we have inline. So this one is called the single line comment like this. And why is it called single line comment? Is because this is the only line that is going to cover. Once you go to next line, nothing happen with those line again. So when you just have a one word on one line like this one, you can just put forward slash, the double forward slash in front of it. Then everything after it, JavaScript is going to ignore it, stop. But apart from that, we have the multi-line comment. So multi-line comment is just like your CSS comment. This is where the CSS pick it from, like that. So as long you've not closed the stuff, it will always be comment like that. So in order for you to close it, then you have to reverse the stuff. So this is the opening, and this is the closing. As long this one is there and this one is not, everything that follows this will always be comment, as you can see. So it doesn't care about whether it is one line or two line or something. So it will always do. We have another type of comment which is known as the doc comment. So that one, we start with this double asterisk, but as you can see now, see the way that one is arranging. So this is known as doc, but you don't really need this one for now. So you only see me using these two a lot. Most of this one, and anywhere I need to comment multiple stuff, there like that, it will work. But since I'm going to be using shortcuts, the VS Code is going to be using this in every time like that. But if you want to comment a lot of things at once, you can just use this one that you open it and you close, instead of you using single per line. Because if I want to achieve this thing on a separate line, I just need to be doing this is one line. So again, if I want to, this is another line. So that's what the VS Code will be doing there like that. So if you want to do it, you can be doing it one by one like this, or you combine all of them together into multi-line comment. So you're only going to be seeing using this one a lot like that, and that's what I'm going to be using. So let me use this one for my this thing, which is going to be the next thing we want to talk about now is variables and data type. So the next thing I want to talk about is variable and data type. So the next thing I want to talk about is variable and data type. So what is variable? In JavaScript, going back to this page there. So look at this value. As you can see right now, the value is 3. But I can change the value to another one. So in JavaScript, how do you do something like this? Or how do you use a name to hold value? You know, when you remember, when we were talking about our CSS, we talked about the variables here too. No, we said variable in CSS is just a name that you're using to represent value. So anytime you need this value, instead of you calling this, what you just call is this Daxian. So the same thing here, this CSS borrowed the stuff from JavaScript. And what is variable? Variable is just a name that you're using to represent a value. So you have a value and you're now using a name to represent it. And anytime you need that value, you just call it. For example, here now, I have age. So, and I want it to hold 25. So anytime I call age, it will give me back 25. Anytime I call name, it will give me back Kayode here, and so forth like that. But when you are dealing with value, we have different types of value that you can work with, and that's what we call data type. Variable is what the name you are using to represent something. But what are you representing? You are using it to representing a data type. And in JavaScript, we have different data types that we're going to be talking about once we get there. But before we get to that place, we need to know how to create variable first. So And when you're creating variable, we have different methods that you can use like that. So we can use this let keyword, we can use this const keyword, and we can use this var keyword. But I will not be using this one because it is kind of old. As you can see, I've put it there. You should always avoid it because it has problem it used to cause that you will not notice that. It's when you are doing something later on that it will be causing serious problem. And that's the reason why these two were into because of the problem of this. So before new JavaScript, this is what you always see to declare variable. So which means if you see somebody else code that is old, you might say this var there. So that's why I'm showing it right now. But in new code, what you always see is this let and cost to create your variable. So when you want to create your variable, you always see let and const being used. But when are you going to be using let? What are you going to be using const? As you can see, I've already put it here like that. So there are variable that you can change their value, and there are some variable that you cannot change their value. So if you have a variable that you know that its value is going to change, like when you're dealing with the basic value and it's going to change later on, you are going to be using let. But if the value is not going to change, like you already know, like for example now, we are creating a program that dealing with calculation of circle. You know, when you're dealing with pi, we already know the value of pi. It will never change. So when you now want to use a name to represent those kind of a value, you know, you don't want the value to change. You don't want to mistakenly change the value somewhere else later on in your program. So you enforce it by letting computer to know that this thing, no, I don't want to change it later on. That's where the const comes in. But there's some value too that you can change. But for now, for all these simple value, you can't change them. So to create a value, to create your variable. So we have variables. So let me type variables like this. So to have variables like that, so I will be putting this. So we have something known as a variable declaration like that. Apart from declaration, we have variable initialization like this. This one that I'm saying here is just maybe when you are taking an exam or whatever stuff. So you know, this is where all this kind of stuff can come in question. Like, you know, when you want to apply for something, some people might want to do interview and so. So you must be able to differentiate between declaration, initialization. Because when someone is not asking you what is declaration, and you know, even though you know how to use it, but because so, so it's not just about you using them alone. You should be able to ask that question if somebody asks you like that. So we have assignments like that. So we have assignment of variables like that. But you'll see that some of them look alike, but this is what we call. So when you're talking about variable declaration, what this means is that you are creating a variable, but at that moment, you don't really have value for that variable. So and how do you do something like that? We have this let, for example, the name of your, so you start with let, then followed by the name of your variable that you want to use like that. And the variable name is coming from you. Just like this, our CSS that we have dark cyan 2, cream, very dark blue, and so forth. Like the same thing here too, you'll be creating your variable name. But there's a problem. The problem here is that this one have rules that you need to follow. Things here is rules, and if you don't follow the rule, you get error. So I will just explain some of them. One of the rules for creating variable is that whatever stuff you want to use for a variable, it has to be text. So it has to start with text. It cannot start with number. So for example, here this is valid. So let's say here we're going to have age. This is a valid variable like that because it's starting again too. You cannot have space, so you cannot have something like this. Let my age. This is not, as you can see, it will cause problem because you cannot have space in between your variable. So if you want to create that kind of a variable there, you have to use underscore. Not I know in CSS what we use is underscore or hyphen, but here too you cannot use hyphen. It has to be underscore, you close it. So here what you do is my age. This is one way of doing it. Let then my age like that. This is another way of doing it. But there this is another one, my age. Three of them are variable, but they are not the same thing. Three of them, even though to your own eye, when you are calling them, the first one is my age, the second one is my age, the third one is my age. But to JavaScript, they are different stuff. And what is happening here is that in JavaScript, all your variables or everything you are going to be doing, all the naming in JavaScript, they are case sensitive. It's not like the HTML that you can type your tag in uppercase, you can type it in lowercase and it will still be the same thing. But yeah, if you start your variable this way, anytime you need it, this is how you are going to call it. If it is the way you create it, this is how you are going to be calling it. If this is how you create it, this is how you are going to be calling the stuff. Because if you call this one, there's no way to be giving you what is here. And there's no way this one too will be giving you what is here. Everything here is case sensitive. There, like in some language, it's not case sensitive. So whether you type it in uppercase or lowercase, it's still the same thing. But all modern language that we have now, everything there is case sensitive there, like that. Again, the number can be there, but it cannot start. So again, the dollar sign can start. Another way of doing it, you can start with underscore too, like that. But all this one, they are not valid. So you cannot start with number. As you can see, number can be there. So here I can just come here and say, let's say, let my age 2 like this. So this is valid. Number can be anywhere apart from the starting point. So, but underscore, as you can see, underscore 2 can be anywhere, whether starting, middle, or end. You can always place it anywhere you want. The only problem with number is that it cannot start. Again, too, you cannot use hyphen because hyphen is doing something else, and you are going to know that when we get to the operator. So that's the reason you cannot use, because it's doing something else, and they're like that. And in JavaScript, we have something known as, or in programming in general, we have something called keyword. So what is keyword? Keyword are reserved identifier in that your programming language. So anytime they say this thing is keyword, what that thing means is that there is something that that text is doing. If you go and use it for another thing, you get error. So here now, when you are creating name, you cannot use let, you cannot use var, you cannot use const as part of your variable, because as you can see, they have what they are doing. So you cannot just come here and say let like this. It doesn't make sense, because as you can see the code, see the color code is different. It will be thinking you are doing something with let, but you know this is not how you type the let. When you are using let, you start, then followed by the name of the variable you are creating like that. So these are the rules that you need to know that is attached to this, because the reason I'm explaining them and I'm not skipping it is because they are very important. If you don't do it correctly, your this thing will not work at all. And this thing is crazy. Anywhere you have error, it will stop there. It doesn't continue up from that line again. So it will, because the way it works is that it's interpreting them line by line. So once you detect any error on line 10, everything after line 10, nothing will work again. It will only do what is coming before that line 10, there like that. So that's why you say that this thing is head of headache and fun. It's fun once you understand the rules, there like that. When you don't understand the rules, that's where you started having headache, like that. But I don't want you to have headache, like that. So you don't need to have so once you start, that's it. Once you start using it, then things are going to be okay. So all this one now, they are valid, but all this one that are here, they are not valid. So that's why I have to comment them out so that it will not complain like that. For example, here now, if I open this one and I save it, go to the page, you see that, as you can see, it's telling me there is one error. If you have more than one error, it will show there. So once you open it, as you can see, syntax error, invalid, like that. And it's telling you that online it detects, but that doesn't mean this line is telling you is where the error is. Sometimes the error is always above. So anytime there is error and it show you where it detects the error, that doesn't mean that's the line. So what you do, check that line first. So if that error is not there, then you keep going up, not down. If you are not going down, it's always from that line upward, because it's not every time that the line it detects the error is where the error is coming from, because sometimes some of the stuff can actually go to multiple lines. So when you get to next line, that's when it will not see it, even though the thing is coming from a pattern. You are going to see later on when we have a lot of errors there like that can span multiple lines. So this is how to create a variable like this. But this one is what we call variable declaration. So what is initialization there? Initialization means you are creating your variable and you are putting value at the same time. The time you create it, that at the same time you put the value straightforward. For example, here we have let. So let me comment out all this one, because you cannot use the same name again once you create it. You can't create it multiple times. So here you are going to have your variable name, then it's going to be the value like this. So this is what we call variable initialization. As you can see, when you declare, you're only talking to JavaScript that this variable, I'll be using it later on, but I don't have value for it right now. But when you are initializing a variable, it means at that point that you are creating it, you already know the value and you've put the value on it like that. For example, here we can say that let age to be 5. So we are initializing variable age with the value 5. Here we are declaring variable age. So when someone says you declare a variable, when someone says you initialize a variable and they did not give you value, you need to ask for the value because in turn you should initialize. So that means at that point you already have the value. Alright, so here as you can see, if you notice, I'm not using const here. I'm not using const here. The reason I'm not using const here is because when you're dealing with const, value must always be there the time you create it. So you can't, no, when you say something is constant, it means we must know the value at that point. And once we know the value, you cannot change it again. So that's why you cannot declare with const. So you can always declare with let, but you can initialize with const. So here you can always have it like this. So you can use const variable name is your whatever value that you want like that. So the same thing here too now. We can just come here and say const name, or let's just say tutor like this, because the tutor name is constant. So we are not changing the tutor name like this. So here now we are creating two variables. There we have the age and we have the tutor name like this. And how do you access them? When you need them later on, we can always use this our console. So we can pass age. No, instead of whatever you pass here, that's what you want to show on the console. So save, you see that is outputting value because this name is holding value. So anytime you call that name, it will go to wherever the value is being saved and it will retrieve it for you there like that. The same thing here too. If I call the tutor name like that and go back to the page, you see that it will give me the updated value there like that. So but if you notice, you see age, look at the way we put the value. We did not put anything around it. But when I want to type Kayode here, I'm putting code there. Why? Is that's where the data type comes in. So we are dealing with data type. We have different ways of representing different type of value. So depending on the value you are working with, we have the way we use to represent them. So one of the value here is what we call string, which is in general the same thing as text. Anytime you hear the word string in any programming language, what they are just saying is text. String like you are, you are stringing things together. So that's why they don't call it, but behind the scene, string is just text. So any programming language that say, oh, create a string, what they are telling you is to create a text, but you need to know how to represent string in that language. So in JavaScript, to represent anything text, you have to put it in a quote. And that's the reason why you see that Kayode here is inside quote. So, and when you're talking about the quote, it can be single, it can be double, and it can be this backtick. But I'll be talking about this one later on when we get to the advanced part that we need it. But for now, you always see me using these two methods. So your string or text can be inside double quote or it can be inside single quote. But the problem with it is that the quote must match. So if you start with double, you have to close with double. If you start with single, you have to close single. But there's some time too you want to put double inside, but you are going to be seeing all those one later on. For example, we have the student name like that. So instead of me using double, even though my editor is going to do some formatting there like that, but you can use any one of them. So once I save the stuff, format it because of the printer, because it's making sure that I'm using one pattern throughout, not that I'm mixing them together. But from the browser directly here, you can actually run your JavaScript code here too, because this is this console here, and as you can see, it's this thing that is blinking is expecting JavaScript code for you like that. But it's not that easy to work with this part than working from here. Again, too, you cannot save this one. Once the page reload, it clears everything, and that's why I'm putting them here so that we can always refer back to them. But yeah, I can use double for Kayode like that, it will work, or I can use the double like this, it will still work like that. So you can, when you're dealing with text, you have to put them in JavaScript, you have to put them in quotes. But when you're dealing with number, So for now, we have this integer and we have a decimal like that. So when you're talking about the integer in coding, like in programming in general, because when you are dealing with other programming language, this thing will help you a lot. So by the time you get there, some stuff they will be saying there, it will just, it's not be new stuff to you. It's so what we were talking about integer. So anytime you hear the word integer, what that thing means is that they are number without decimal points. So any number without decimal point in programming, we call it integer. But for all those ones that have decimal point, in some language, they call it float. While some, they call it decimal there like that. But decimal, float, they are the same thing. The difference between them in other languages is just the size of what you can put inside them. Because the same thing to integer too. In some language, based on the type you want, you cannot put more than a specific number of value there. It will reject or it will shrink it to what you can. But here, number in general, so we don't care whether it is integer or decimal. They are all referred to as number in JavaScript. And what is number? So to represent number, as you can see, you don't put quotes. So here, these two are not the same. So this H is not the same thing as this. Both of them are not the same. This one is number, as you can see here, number. While this one is a string. And the way you work with these 5 here is not the same thing you work with these 5. So each data you have to use correct data type, because some of these data, they have the operation you can perform on them. So when you're dealing with string, the way you perform operation on string is different from the way you perform operation on your integer or number there like that. So to represent number, we don't put quotes around it like that. Again, we have some other base that you can work with. So base 10 is what everybody is used to, but JavaScript supports base 2, it supports base 8, and it supports base 16. So as you can see here, to work with base 16, we normally, this one here is not even base 16 right now, like that. I did not really add details, so I'm going to be updating it. So this is how to do exponential here. So this E, what it just means is that exponential, which is your normal, number times 10 raised to power whatever stuff you have there. So what this will mean is that this is 1 times 10 raised to power 6. So this E is the same thing as 10 raised to power, but there's no way to type it on the keyboard. So that's why they're using E to represent that 10 raised. As you can see, since you have 6, that means you are going to have 6 0, since you are multiplying by 1. But if you multiply by any other number, it means that number will be multiplied by 10 raised to power 6 like that. So this is how to do that scientific notation, because you cannot type it on keyboard. There's no way to type it. But apart from that, we have binary number. So to represent binary number in JavaScript, you start with 0, then followed by B. Then whatever that number that follows it is all about binary. And binary is just 1 and 0. So here if I put 1 0 1 0 like that, press enter, as you can see, I'm getting back my result. And that's why you see that this one is telling us that it is 10, because by the time you pass this in now to JavaScript, in your console, it will translate it to base 10 automatically. But if you want it to still display base 2 for you, you can always pass it, but we are not there yet, so I don't want to be calling any function right now until we get to the function part. Again, too, we have octa, which is base 8, which, please, this thing is very important too. JavaScript is crazy, because it used to do something known as casting. So as you can see, it used to do this type cohesion here. And what that means is that when JavaScript says that it can convert one type to another one automatically, it will do it. As you can see that it's doing this one too here. This is what I type. But by the time the result come outside, it's bringing in base 10. So the same thing here too. Please listen. Base 8 is any number between 0 and 7. But how do you represent it in JavaScript? So once you start your number with 0, any number that follows it, if it is not greater than 7, it will think you are dealing with base 8 automatically. So here if I put 1 6, as you can see, you type 0 1 6, but it's bringing out 14. Why? Because it has already converted this one to base 8. But assuming the number there, one of them is bigger than 7 now, you get your, so since the number cannot be in base 8, then 2. But if you type 16 directly, 16 is 16. But if you start with 0, that's where the problem is. Once you start with 0, it will convert as long those number that follows it they are not up to any one of them is not up to 8, it will be base uh, uh, 8 automatically. So none of the number here is up to 8. So as long as you are between 0 to 7, whatever number you combine it together, once it start with 0, it will convert it to base 8. But to make it feasible, you can always do 0 O like this. So it's still the same thing too. When you do 0 O and you put it, see, it will still do the same thing. So 16 like that. But this O is not necessary like that because this one is automatic conversion, but this one you are being explicit. This one you are telling it that you are dealing with octa directly. But when you do it in this way, when you do it like this, it will automatically convert it for you. But when you put O there, so it means whatever you want to pass have to be a valid. So here now, when we don't pass the O like that, so if you don't pass the O and you use a number that is bigger than 7, you see that it do normal stop. But once you put O there like that, as you can see, because here you are being explicit that you are dealing with base 8, but now you are now passing more than. So as you can see, it will tell you it doesn't know what you are doing. So this one is doing conversion for us. This one is doing conversion out of the box. But this one, you are being explicit, so it will never do anything because the same thing too for binary too. You are being explicit 0b, then whatever number that follows it must always be 0 and 1. You can't use any other thing. Again, we have base 16 there like that. So that one is 0x. So 0x, then followed by any base 16. Base 16 is just 0 to 9, then A to F. So here I can use AB. This is a valid number. As long as you start with 0x, it knows that everything that follows it have to be a valid hexadecimal number like that. So this is the value when you are dealing with base 10 like that. But most of the time, we're not going to be, for what we are doing here right now, we're not going to be using base 8 like that. We're not going to be using base 16 like that. But at some time, maybe you are dealing with conversion of color. That's where that one can come in. But for now, we don't need it. The what we are going to be using most under the number here is just this normal number, which is integer, or the one with the decimal point like that. So that is about the number, and you can only convert from one type to the other one. Later on, we are going to be talking about it. And in the next class here, I'm going to be starting with this operator like that because they are very important too. And we do more to this because I'll be having we're having a meeting soon in 2 minutes. So so that's what I want.